Hello everyone, Andres from AA Sports, and in this sports episode, I will be talking about the FIFA Women's International break and the two games for the Mexico Women's National Team. After a competitive semifinal result in the Women's Gold Cup that saw them beat the United States in the group stage, the Mexico Women's National Team had two matches against Colombia and Australia on April 6th and April 9th, with the match against Colombia first. In the game against Colombia, Mexico unfortunately lost 1-0 in Orlando at Interco Stadium. This was a close game where Mexico was competitive amid what was a very pro-Colombian crowd. Unfortunately, despite having the majority of ball possession at 55%, a passing accuracy rate of 70%, and 7 corner kick opportunities, they had no shots on target with the goal in this game and only had one shot the entire game. Colombia, on the other hand, despite only having 45% ball possession, still made the most of their opportunities with possession and had 11 shots with 4 on target. One of them being Catalina Uzmez's goal just before the halftime break. It was a competitive yet still unfortunate loss that, to an extent, given Mexico did have majority possession, it does feel like a missed opportunity because they were playing well and had, again, majority possession. So here are their grades for their first game of this international break. Goalkeeper, B+. Estefany Barreras had 3 good saves in this game. However, prior to the end of the first half, a goal was conceded that was shot into the top of the corner of the far post, which she unfortunately could not save. This unfortunately ended up being the goal that won the game for Colombia, given it was a 1-0 result. Defense, B. They got outplayed by Colombia's strong offensive front, with Colombia's players being faster and outrunning them, along with their experience. It resulted in Colombia having more opportunities than Mexico was. That Mexico was lucky didn't result in more goals scored. However, the defense, along with Barrera's 3 saves, still managed to win 15 tackles, have 12 clearances, 17 interceptions, and 3 blocks. The defense made errors, but still played well enough to keep the game close the full 90 minutes and very, very low scoring. Midfield, D+. They had the worst performance of the team in this game and got really completely outplayed. Colombia's offense was able to dribble the ball past the midfield players, and their midfield was able to push up with the ball against Mexico's as well. And on offense, they were non-existent as they struggled to push up and failed to take a single shot towards the goal in this game. This was not a good look for them and was one of the worst performances from the midfield we have seen in a while. Offense, C-. They were able to push up, and the team was, as a whole, had the majority of possession in the game with 55% ball possession. However, they were still unable to create any opportunities and only had 1 shot in this game that wasn't even on target. Surprisingly, Mayra Pelayo was not starting this game and only got 12 minutes of playing time. This was disappointing as she is one of the best forwards Mexico has right now and should be a starter given how well she played in the Women's Gold Cup. With the positive impact she makes on the field, maybe they could have tied or won if they gave her more playing time. So, at this point, that put Mexico women back at it put them at back-to-back losses to Brazil in the semifinals of the Women's Gold Cup and Colombia now after a strong showing at the Women's Gold Cup. Their second game, where they hoped to turn back to winning ways, would be against Australia, a Final Four finisher in the Women's World Cup in 2023. This, you can imagine, would be a tough matchup for Mexico given Australia's success and experience. Sure enough, it was a tough match, and Mexico unfortunately lost this game as well, 2-0. So Mexico women's national team lost 2-0 versus Australia. Entering this game, this was a tough test that if Mexico were to pull off, would have been a huge upset for Australia and a huge win for Mexico as they develop their national team. Unfortunately, Mexico simply is not yet good enough to win against Australia right now and wasn't on Tuesday. And the talent difference was visible. Australia had 8 shots total with 4 on target, 62% ball possession, and 2 goals from Hailey Rosso and Caitlin Ford. Mexico only had 38% ball possession. However, they were still relatively competitive and were better offensively in this game with 8 shots and 2 on target. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to beat Australia's stronger roster. The defense looked weak and were outplayed, and so did the midfield, which is back-to-back games where the midfield was a weak part of the team. Losing in front of a pro-Mexico crowd in Texas also doesn't help either. But it was expected, and Mexico really are simply trying to test their skill, regardless if it's a win, loss, or draw. So, let's see. Here are my grades for the second game versus Australia. Goalkeeper, C-. Barreras had both good and bad moments in this game. The first goal she should have saved. She had a hand on it, but still failed to save it, which was honestly poor reaction timing on her part. Barreras could have done better there and needs to in the future. The second goal, you could argue, was savable, but at the same time, it was also a good goal coming from a shot perfectly to the far post. She also had 2 saves in this game, so with those 2 saves, you can't say she completely failed. So C- I think is a fair grade here. Defense, D. The defense conceded 2 goals, both with the Australian forwards being able to dribble and shoot the ball past Mexico's defenders. They got outplayed today. They got outplayed, well, not today, but they got outplayed this week. Mainly due to inexperience at the national team level, as Carla Martinez was making her national team debut for Mexico this week. So with players making their debut and, new players on the field for the national team, the inexperience in the defensive end there showed. I'll say the same thing for the midfielders. D grade. The midfield got outplayed and the Australian players were able to pass and dribble the ball by them. The only player who tried to get anything going offensively in the midfield was Alexia Delgado and substitute Nicole Perez, with 3 shots between them. But Bernal and Mari Carmen Reyes Zarate were non-existent offensively. Offensive front, C. Yasmin Cáceres, despite having 2 shots, didn't have a good game. She was indecisive with the ball and missed a shot wide in an opportunity where she could have and should have taken the shot earlier. Diana Ordóñez did not play well either, and Scarlett Camberos got injured and was forced to come out of the game early. The offensive front overall was still actually competitive and had 8 shots with 2 of them on target, despite only having 38% of possession. They just were unable to finish with good shots on goal. And once again, Mayra Pelayo was left on the bench for most of this game and only played the last 16 minutes. Again, I would like to see her as a starter more, and if not, at least get more playing time than just 16 minutes. Coach. As an overall grade, this is as an overall grade for both games. B. This may be a surprising grade given how the team lost both games, and some players would have probably been better to start instead of others, and strategic decisions like that. Which is why I'm not giving Pedro Lopez an A grade here. However, I gotta give him credit for being willing to experiment with the team with new and young players, as 3 players were called up that were not on the national team roster during the Women's Gold Cup, and Carla Martinez, a completely new player to the national team, she got to make her debut this week. There were also other players such as Maricarmen Reyes Zarate and Scarlett Camberos who haven't made an appearance for the national team in like a year or longer. He also did not call up Katie Martinez or Licha Cervantes, two players which, as we all remember, Pedro Lopez was criticized for not calling up during the Women's Gold Cup, which suggests Lopez seeks to develop a new young team without more of the same players. In fact, the average age of Mexico's team this week was 24 years old. That's 3 years younger than both squads for Australia and Colombia. It also made them younger than the United States and Canada's national teams in the She Believes Cup. Calling up newer and younger players along with playing national teams that are on equal level, or in the case for Australia, better than them, is good for Mexico's women's national team, as this is how the team will grow and develop. And the fact that he is giving players minutes to see, what works and doesn't work is also great. And it's something the men's team needs to do. Give younger and different players chances and minutes. So overall, I give Pedro Lopez a B grade this week for focusing on trying to build the team up for the long run in hopes of qualifying for the 2027 Women's World Cup and to be competitive there. Here's another extra grade I'm going to give. I don't know if it was the Mexican Football Federation or Pedro Lopez's idea, or both together, but to have two international games versus even matched or stronger teams, whoever's idea that was, A grade. There's only one way to develop a strong national team, and it's by playing against stronger opponents, not partidos moleros. Hopefully, they continue to do this and start doing this with the men's national team more. Now, lastly, my overall grade this week for the Mexico women's national team this week. B- grade. They lost both games, but despite losing, they were still competitive. The defense played well against Colombia and kept the score low, and they kept the team in the game the full 90 minutes. And they only lost 2-0 versus Australia, while the offense produced an even amount of opportunities as Australia, despite only having 38% possession. Remember, Australia was a Final Four team in the Women's World Cup and are one of the best teams in the world right now, while Mexico failed to qualify for the last two World Cups. If this were 3 to 5 years ago, this team would without a doubt get absolutely thrashed in both of these games. While they don't have the talent yet to beat all of the world's best, they have improved significantly over the last year and a half and are now good enough to compete and maybe pull off an upset against them as they look to improve to be a golden generation in the future. After these two losses, the Mexico women's team has now lost 3 straight games in a row, unfortunately. However, there are still things to be positive about with this improved Mexican side. Now it's really all about getting the strategies, the players, and the factors all working together. The team will hope to do that this summer in July in their next international game against the United States women's team, where they will look to win back-to-back games against the Americans in Red Bull Arena, New York. So, hey, we'll see if Mexico can do it again. Andres from AA Sports, that's all for me in this one. Like and subscribe to the channel and help grow the Passion Project. And put your opinions in the comments below on the Mexico women's national team. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much.